So I've been monitoring this Azerbaijan-Armenia situation over Nagorno-Karabakh, and it is a situation that is rapidly evolving. It just changes so fast that any video that a lot of people make here is just obsolete within a few hours. And it seems they have a ceasefire. But when you read into that ceasefire a little further, you realize that Azerbaijan got everything they wanted. And if this region looks familiar to those of you that were in the military, it's actually on the map where we do a lot of our simulations training between the Arianans and the Atropians. So when you hear Baku and you're like, I've heard that somewhere before, that's where. But more to the point, on the global stage, Armenia has agreed to disarm the region, basically giving Azerbaijan everything they wanted. And Azerbaijan has said they will reabsorb the territory back into their country, into their fold, and Armenia is not going to be able to do anything about that. What the strategic implications are pretty telling as to Russia's influence even within the Collective Security Treaty Organization, or even former Soviet states, or its Soviet umbrella rather. Russia did nothing. This is essentially a treated member with somewhat of a collective defense trigger. It's not as strong as Article 5 in NATO, but it was strong enough that Russia could have come to the aid of Armenia. And by treaty, they have mutual defense in this situation. Armenia believes they were invaded. And Russia is saying now that they are punishing Armenia for leaning more towards the West, towards trying to build relations with the West, because they are now realizing that Russia created the CSTO to just bolster its own image, to say, hey, we have an organization too, just like NATO, but it's not just like NATO. It is an organization where countries have said on paper they are for their collective defense, but clearly that's not the case, as Armenia was invaded and Russia sat and did nothing. Russia wasn't silent, though. Russia came out and said flat out, this is punishment for their leanings towards the West. So not only is Russia's influence waning heavily because they didn't respond in the slightest, even in the past they haven't responded, but the fact of the matter is, within the Collective Security Treaty Organization, they're flat out telling countries that it's our way or the highway. Even in NATO, it's not necessarily the US dictates everyone. We've seen that before when France and Germany refused to go fight in Iraq, and they're a part of NATO. This situation is very much telling of the strength Russia has lost on the global stage, not only with trade partners, with military endeavors and adventurism elsewhere, but just within its own allies. And this is something that we may not see Russia recover from for decades because of their tantrums they throw at countries that are not necessarily supporting them in Ukraine, because most of the countries, including those in the Central Asian region, the Kazakhstans and things like that, believe that it is Putin's folly in Ukraine right now. And Putin is furious about that. So none of these countries are helping each other. That is not an alliance. That is not a defensive structure that you will come to the aid of other countries, because they flat out aren't. And it just shows how weak Russia has become.